So my husband, he's the one, of course, that is diagnosed, and he tends to ignore his diagnosis because I think there was a lot of things that happened to him when he was growing up. For example, my husband has the chest of a person with Marfan's can either be concave or it can stick out. In my husband's case, his rib cage sticks out. And so it seems to me like he likes to kind of camouflage that the best that he can because he's had an experience where he went to a store once and was stopped by a security officer and told that he needed to check him because he thought he had something underneath his clothes. And my husband had to beat on his chest and explain, no, I have a pigeon chest is what they call it. And my mother-in-law said that when he was young, they said that they could fix it, but in order to fix it, they would have to break his rib cage, and then he would be on bed rest until the rib cage formed back together and the way it was supposed to be. And my husband chose not to do it. He was at an age where he just didn't want to get it done. On the outside, a lot of the time they look very normal, though. My kids do, anyways. They're tall and skinny, but there's a lot of kids that are tall. Some people, though, it's very obvious. You can look at them and tell that they have the lens dislocation. But with my kids, it's not as obvious. So I have to really go to the school, because now that they're school age, I have to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. And my kids recently have had certain things that have come up that have made it a little bit of a challenge. My oldest son has ADD, and in order for us to get him on ADD medication, which I'm not even sure I want to do, we have to have an echocardiogram, and he hasn't had one in 3 years due to cost. So I have just been trying to work with the school, and the best way to work with the school is to ask them to do a 504 or an IEP. And I had no idea what these things were until I like to talk to other people and kind of get information, and I happened to talk to a mother that told me about this. And so I initiated a 504. But the school has to agree that the child is in need of a 504. So they do in-classroom observations to see what kind of assistance the child needs, what kind of extra help the child needs. And then they meet with me and discuss what they've observed and whether or not they feel that we can go forward with it. We just barely had our meeting last week, and they did agree that Brighton does need a 504 and an IEP. So instead of medicating my son, we just try to do things at the school that kind of just help him focus a little bit better, or if he needs to get up and move around more than the other kids do, he has that ability. Redirect him, like have the teacher just kind of bring back the focus and help in that way. We also have to be very careful with PE and extensive. A lot of times they have field trips where the kids walk to where they're going, and my son gets really, really sore and tired from walking because his feet are really bad, and fatigue is also a symptom of Marfan's. So he doesn't have to walk if the requirement is to walk because of this condition. So we've made that available. The school nurse is aware. If my son were to get a sudden blow to his chest, say at recess, they have to call 911. There has to be an emergency plan for that. So we have that all in place at the school. It just requires a lot of extra work on my end as a mom. I think my boys are just barely getting to an age, my oldest one being 9, he's just barely getting to an age where he's aware that he is a little bit different than the other kids that's in class. Um, and we try to have conversations with him about the fact that he's special and unique, and he can do this trick with his toes where when he points his toes down, his big toe points up. And I think it's hilarious, and he thinks it's hilarious, so he likes to share that. But I think at times he can feel a little bit out of place. And for example, in school, he has a difficult time writing, and I think that's because of his joint issues. So my teacher, or his teacher, said the other day that a kid was starting to tease him about it, and she was kind enough to just say, I have a hard time writing too, and that's just part of, what makes us different is sometimes some people it hurts to write with a pencil. And the kid kind of got quiet and didn't say much else. But I think the biggest thing is they just want to feel like everybody else. And they are like everybody else. Their mental state is not different. They are just as intelligent as anybody else. But to not point out any abnormalities is kind of a big deal. I get really worried when my son takes off his socks and shoes in front of his peers that they're going to notice how his feet are so different and start pointing it out and start teasing him. So I almost try to protect him from that, but I can only do so much, and I think if the biggest thing would just be to make them feel like they're not that different. Even if somebody's feet look different, they're still a person, they're still the same as everybody else. Then they just don't want to be teased. And I worry about bullying so much because I know it's kind of becoming an epidemic these days, and it would break my heart. And I know my son is so sensitive, it would break his heart if somebody were to point out his abnormalities in front of his peers especially. So I just try to, I don't know if there's anything in particular to do other than just be nice. I think the biggest, hardest part with my situation in particular is my husband's lack of wanting to share what his experience is and kind of hide it from the world. And I feel like you're going to suffer more if you just hide what your diagnosis is. You have no control over what you genetically have when you are born. And the biggest thing that I'd like for my kids to learn is that nothing's wrong with them. They're just different. And they can have a normal life just like anybody else. And don't let that difference hold you back. Don't be ashamed of who you are, because they're beautiful. And they have so much to offer, just like anybody else does. And they're almost even in a better position because they are so unique. And I hope that they're willing to share and educate other people so that they can just kind of not feel so abnormal. I want them to feel very, very normal. And they are very normal. They just have different things that they have to learn to deal with, and just don't let it hold you back. I also encourage anybody who has this or may even think that they have this to follow up with medical care. It was back in the day when it was diagnosed, people tended to die at a young age. 40 was kind of the length of life that they would live to. My husband just turned 40 this year, and so I think I'm even more so paranoid about what the next few years may have to hold. And take care of your health. It's the best tool you have in life. So if you don't have your health, you're not going to be able to do much. So take care of yourself.